Welcome back, everybody, to another deep dive. And today, we're really kind of exploring this idea that the cookie cutter approach to triathlon training, it doesn't really work for everyone. And
Mm.
to help us unpack this, we're going to be looking at training insights from legendary coach Brett Sutton,
Ah, Brett Sutton.
who's had an incredible track record of success and really kind of turned heads with some of his more unconventional training methods.
Yeah, I think one of the things that makes Sutton so unique is that he's such an outsider.
Hmm.
He really does challenge the status quo. He's not afraid to shake things up and it has this great way of describing himself. He says that he's a piano tuner who doesn't play piano.
Okay, that's interesting. A piano tuner who doesn't play piano. What's that all about? What's he getting at?
Well, he says, by not being a pianist himself, it gives him a much clearer and more objective view of the instrument.
Okay.
And he's applied that same objective lens to the sport of triathlon,
Hmm.
which is, I think, why he's been able to see things that more traditional coaches may have missed.
So he's not bound by all the dogma. He can just look at the athlete and what their needs are.
Absolutely. And, one of his biggest revelations, and I think something that he's really well known for, is the idea that we need to ditch this one-size-fits-all approach when it comes to training men and women.
Well, yeah, that makes sense. But what's the science behind that? Why is that?
I think it really comes down to basic physiology.
Okay.
Men and women has vastly different hormonal profiles,
Right.
and those different hormonal profiles directly impact how their bodies respond to training.
Hormones, huh? Well, I'm guessing testosterone is a big player in all of this.
Oh, absolutely. Testosterone is a key player. And of course, men naturally have much higher levels of testosterone than women.
Right.
And we know that testosterone plays a huge role in building muscle and recovering from those tough workouts.
Okay, so if I'm a female athlete listening to this, what does that mean for me? Like, should I even bother, like, lifting weights and things?
Oh, absolutely, you should lift weights. But you're right, it is important to understand this difference.
Mm-hmm.
If you're a woman, you're not going to see the same muscle building gains from those really long, slow sessions that a male athlete might get
Mm-hmm.
because you simply don't have the same hormonal environment.
So it's not about just working harder, it's about working smarter.
Exactly. Women can get amazing results with shorter, higher intensity training.
Wait, really? Less time, best results? I'm listening.
Well, there's two main reasons for this.
Okay.
The first is that women tend to have a higher percentage of body fat,
Okay.
which actually is a huge advantage in endurance sports.
Hold on now. More body fat is a good thing. That goes against everything we hear, like in mainstream fitness and.
It does. Right. It's so counterintuitive, but it's absolutely true. Women are just naturally better at burning fat for fuel,
Mm.
especially during, long efforts like triathlon, and they don't need to spend hours and hours training to develop that ability. Their bodies are already primed for it.
Okay, that's mind-blowing. So that's the first reason. What's the second reason?
Second reason is that women recover faster from intense workouts.
Hmm.
Their bodies are just more efficient at clearing out those metabolic byproducts and repairing muscle tissue.
So they can push further, bounce back quicker, and ultimately just get more out of their training.
Yeah, they do. It's like a superpower. But here's where things get even more interesting.
Okay.
Sutton doesn't just see athletes as male or female.
Mm.
He sees them on this continuum.
A continuum, so it's not black and white.
Exactly. Picture a line with,
Okay.
lighter females at one end and then heavier males at the other.
Okay.
And all athletes kind of fall somewhere along that spectrum based on, their individual characteristics.
So I'm starting to see how this could really change how we approach training.
Absolutely. Let's say you have a female athlete who is very muscular and powerful.
Right.
She might actually fall, further to the right on that continuum,
Okay.
maybe closer to where some of the men would be.
So even though she's female, her training might actually look more like what we traditionally think of as a male athlete.
It might. And then on the other hand, you could have a very lean, lightweight male athlete,
Yeah.
and he might fall further to the left on that continuum,
Okay.
closer to where some of the women would be.
Interesting.
So it really is about looking at the individual.
That's fascinating. All right, well, let's take a quick break and we'll come back and unpack this whole athlete continuum idea even more after the break.
And we are back, still deep diving into Coach Brett Sutton and his unique training methods for triathletes.
Yeah, last time we were talking about how men and women, really need kind of drastically different approaches to their training. And this idea of the athlete continuum,
Yeah.
it really kind of blew my mind.
It's a real game changer, isn't it? It really helps us move beyond these kind of rigid categories and embrace the unique needs of each athlete.
Yeah, it's like we've been trying to fit, square pegs into round hole for way too long.
Exactly. And, this concept of the athlete continuum, it ties directly into another one of Sutton's kind of crucial aspects of his training philosophy, and that is recovery.
Okay, recovery. I mean, everyone knows rest is important, but Sutton has some pretty radical views on this, doesn't he?
He does, especially when it comes to female athletes.
Hmm.
He believes that women often need less rest than their male counterparts.
Now, that kind of sounds counterintuitive. Shouldn't everybody be resting the same amount?
You would think so, but remember those hormonal differences we were talking about earlier?
Yeah.
They play a major role here as well.
So the lower testosterone in women is actually a benefit when it comes to recovery.
Exactly. Women tend to recover faster from both, aerobic and anaerobic training.
Okay?
They're just able to clear out those metabolic byproducts and repair that muscle tissue so much more efficiently.
So they're less likely to get overtrained or injured.
Right. It's a huge advantage.
And it also means they can kind of handle a higher training load overall without burning out.
Exactly.
So if I'm a female athlete, I could potentially train more frequently and still recover properly?
Potentially, yes. But you always want to, listen to your body, understand how much recovery you need.
Right.
So there's that individualization.
That individualization. So how does all of this impact race preparation? And I'm thinking specifically about tapering, that period of reduced training before a big event.
Yeah, well, Sutton believes that women can thrive on much shorter tapers than men.
Really?
We're talking maybe just a couple of days leading up to the race compared to, the longer tapers that are often recommended for men.
Wow, that's a big difference. So they can maintain their fitness and their sharpness without that, extended rest period.
Exactly. Because their bodies are already so efficient at recovering, they don't need as much time to, rebuild that muscle and replenish those energy stores.
It's amazing. It's like they're always one step ahead.
They are. But what about men? They need those longer papers, right?
Right, yeah.
Generally, yes, men often benefit from a more gradual reduction in training volume
Hmm.
to, avoid feeling sluggish or burnt out on race day.
So it's all about finding that sweet spot for each athlete.
Precisely. And that's where the real art of coaching comes in.
Right.
You need to assess those individual needs, observe how athletes respond to different training loads, and adjust accordingly.
It's like a puzzle, isn't it?
Yeah.
Fitting all the pieces together to create the perfect picture of performance.
That's a great analogy. And speaking of fitting pieces together, let's circle back to that athlete continuum.
Yes, let's.
You were talking about, how a muscular female athlete might train more like a man and vice versa.
Right.
But how does that actually play out in a training plan?
Yeah.
It gets really interesting. Let's imagine we have two athletes, a very powerful, muscular female triathlete and a, leaner, lighter male triathlete.
Okay.
Both are training for an Ironman.
Okay.
Traditionally, their training plans might look very similar based purely on their gender.
Right, the cookie cutter approach.
Exactly, but using Sutton's continuum, their plans would actually be quite different.
Hmm.
The muscular female athlete being further to the right on that continuum
Okay.
might benefit from longer rides to really build that strength and endurance just like a male athlete would.
So we're not limiting her training based on, a gender stereotype.
Right.
We're looking at her individual strengths and her needs.
Exactly. And she might also need to focus more on, upper body strength for the swim.
Yeah.
Which can be a challenge for a lot of women, due to the lower testosterone levels.
So we're addressing her specific weaknesses even if they're not, typical for her gender.
Exactly. Now, on the flip side, that leaner male athlete being further to the left on the continuum might actually thrive with some of the training elements that are traditionally associated with female athletes.
Okay, I'm really intrigued now. Give me an example.
Well, he might benefit from incorporating shorter, more intense interval sessions, to build speed and power.
Interesting. So we're playing to his natural strengths, even though that's not, the typical approach for male athletes.
Exactly. And his training might also focus more on, maximizing his fat burning capacity,
Right.
which is a natural advantage for someone with a leaner build.
So we're essentially tailoring the training plan to the athlete's unique physiology, regardless of whether they're male or female.
Exactly. We're acknowledging that there's so much more to an athlete than just their gender.
This is revolutionary stuff. It's like it completely reframes how we think about training.
It does. It's all about optimizing performance by embracing, the beauty of individual differences.
That's amazing. Well, unfortunately, that's all the time we have for today, but we will be back next week to continue this deep dive into Brett Sutton's training methods. Welcome back to the deep dive. We've been talking about Coach Brett Sutton's revolutionary approach to triathlon training. And, well, I got to say, my mind is officially blown.
It really is a whole new way of looking at things, isn't it? Ditching those outdated gender stereotypes and just embracing the individual.
It is. And I love how he uses that athlete continuum, to create truly personalized training plans, but we've only scratched the surface of his methods.
Oh, yeah.
He's also known for some pretty unconventional training techniques, right?
Absolutely. He's always pushing the boundaries, always questioning that status quo. And one of his most interesting idea, I think, is that triathlon is what he calls a compromise sport.
A compromise? What does he mean by that?
Well, he argues that trying to be equally good at all three disciplines, the swim, the bike, and the run,
Yeah.
it can actually hold athletes back.
Really?
Yeah, he encourages athletes to really focus on their strengths and be, good enough in their weaker areas.
So instead of trying to be a jack of all trades, you become a master of one.
Exactly. Let's say you have an athlete who's a phenomenal cyclist but really struggles with swimming. Sutton might have them, spend significantly more time training on the bike,
Okay.
even if it means cutting back on those swim workouts.
That's pretty radical. Most coaches would say you need to be, well-rounded in all three.
They would, but Sutton's philosophy is all about maximizing, your strengths to gain a competitive edge.
Hmm.
He believes that by excelling in one area, you can really make up for any, slight weaknesses in the others.
So you're not neglecting the weaker areas.
Right.
You're just strategically allocating your training time.
Exactly. Working smarter, not necessarily harder. And you know what? Sutton's results, they speak for themselves.
Yeah,
He's coached countless world champions, Olympic medalists using this approach.
that's incredible. It really does challenge, the conventional wisdom. So for our listeners out there who are trying to apply this compromise concept, how do they identify, where their strengths and their weaknesses lie?
That's a great question. It requires, I think, a lot of, honest self-assessment and maybe even some guidance from a coach who understands this philosophy.
Right.
But, look at your race results, look at your training data. How do you feel during different workouts? What comes naturally to you? What do you dread?
And don't be afraid to specialize.
Absolutely. Embracing your strengths can be incredibly empowering. It allows you to, focus your energy on what you do best and really excel in that area.
This has been such an eye-opening conversation. I think the biggest takeaway for me is that there's no one-size-fits-all approach to triathlon training. It's about understanding your individual needs, your strengths, and your weaknesses.
I couldn't agree more. And, being open to new ideas, challenging the status quo, and really finding what works best for you.
So where would you fall on that athlete continuum? That's something for all of our listeners to ponder. And with that, this has been another fascinating deep dive. Thanks for joining us.